Sent from Disneyland, history in our hand. So much to say about yesterday and the decades we have spanned. Postcards from the park, this journey will embark. See what has changed and what remains on Sent from Disneyland. Sent from Disneyland.
Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this podcast, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland, Disneyland history, and more, with mementos, snapshots, souvenirs, and postcards sent from Disneyland, from 1955 to the present. Let's start by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join in at any level to support the show and receive snail mail from my trips to Disneyland and from my desk, plus some sneak peeks and bonus content. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the rest of the e-ticket patrons, to Nia, Eric Daniels, Monica Seitz Vega, Scott Cagle, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Angela Reynolds, Grace Coate, Patty Wolin, and Ben and Noel Bruning. B-ticket patron Joshua Bell, and to the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Angel DeBlock, and the Beyond the Railroad podcast. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has an aerial view of Fantasyland. In the center you can see the Mad Tea Party. On the top you can see the Mickey Mouse Club Theater and the Welch's Grape Juice stand. And if you look closely, on the top right-hand corner you can see the ticket booth and entrance to Dumbo Flying Elephants. On the back it reads, Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Spinning cups and saucers delight guests as they take a ride at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party in Fantasyland, home of Snow White, Mr. Toad, Casey Jr., Alice in Wonderland, and many others. It's postmarked August 6, 1961, with a Tucson, Arizona, Remember Only You Can Prevent Forest Fires cancel, and a 3-cent purple Liberty postage stamp, Scott number 1035. I assume they visited the park on Saturday, August 5, 1961, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to midnight. The weather was a high of 93 and a low of 68. Park attendance that day was 37,647. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. S.C. Woodside of Independence, Missouri. It reads, Arrived in Tucson safe and sound, no car trouble or anything. It's good to be back in a way, but I was certainly impressed by the West Coast. You all should really come out this way. Love, Nancy. Dumbo has been popping up in my social media feed, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about the history of the Disneyland attraction. Original Disneyland concept art included having a flying elephant attraction based on the Dumbo movie. Looking at some of the different renderings, one looks similar to what was made and what we have today. Another one had the elephants attached to wires in the front and back of the ride vehicle, allowing for a swinging effect similar to a chair swing attraction, like the Silly Symphony swings. The original attraction was going to have 10 pink elephants based on the Pink Elephants on Parade segment of the Dumbo movie. The idea was scrapped to distance the park and Fantasyland away from the idea of intoxication. The elephants were all painted gray to look like Dumbo and had ears that would move up and down as the attraction went around. The ear movement never really worked the way it was supposed to, and due to some other challenges, Dumbo was not going to be ready for opening day. Instead, Dumbo Flying Elephants opened on August 16, 1955 as a B-ticket attraction. Some of the early changes to the attraction included adding Timothy Mouse on top of a mirrored ball at the center of the attraction. And looking at photos, the side of the Dumbo ride vehicles were cut to allow for easier access for guests to get in and out. One famous story about the attraction happened in 1957 when former President Harry S. Truman visited Disneyland and said he would not ride the attraction because he was a Democrat and the elephant was a symbol of the Republican Party. Around 1959, Dumbo was upgraded to a C-ticket attraction. The next change to the attraction was in the mid-1960s, when the ears were made permanently stationary and the eye color was changed from having blue irises and a black pupil to just having a black pupil. There was plans to move the attraction in the 1970s to make a circus land in Fantasyland. These plans ended up being used on the East Coast for Walt Disney World's Fantasyland. Add some flair to your mail by checking out stamps at Enfield Post. You can explore different stamp options on our Etsy site, grab some great deals by following EP Sunday Sales on Instagram, or create something special and have her design a stamp array for your invitation or celebration. You can head over to EnfieldPost.com and explore all the different vintage postage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and EnfieldPost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has Donald Duck riding Dumbo Flying Elephants. You can also see Huey, Dewey, and Louie balancing on an arm lifting up another ride vehicle. In the background, you can see the Matterhorn, and if you look closely, you can see a few Skyway buckets heading in and out of the mountain. On the back it reads, Flying Dumbo. Soaring through the air on Dumbo's back is a thrill for Donald, as his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie balance fearlessly on another flying Dumbo, and waved at the Fantasyland guests below. It's postmarked September 29, 1965, with a San Pedro, Pray for Peace cancel, and a 4-cent Lincoln postage stamp, Scott number 1036. I assume they visit the park on Wednesday, September 29, 1965, when park hours were from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The weather was a high of 86 and a low of 50. Park attendance that day was 8,347. It's addressed to Betty Mayer of Drumright, Oklahoma. It reads, Betty, wish you were here with me. Love, Anne. In 1982, when New Fantasyland was being constructed, the Dumbo attraction was completely rebuilt with 16 elephants and a new look with Timothy Mouse standing on a hot air balloon. When it reopened in 1983, Tony Baxter explained that it looked like a toy or a clock that Geppetto might build. The new version did have some mechanical issues in March of 1989 and April of 1990. Guests walked away with some minor scrapes and bruises, but the attraction needed to be replaced. Luckily, one was being built for Euro Disney, so the complete attraction was moved over to Anaheim, and Disneyland Paris received an identical one, which was rushed to be completed by 1992. The one intended for Paris had a small change to Timothy, as he was given a feather to replace the whip in his hand at the top of the attraction. In the late 1990s, the attraction received a few modifications, including the return of the blue irises and black pupils from the 1950s version. The attraction did receive a gold ride vehicle for the 50th anniversary of the park, as it was an attraction that opened in 1955, although not on opening day, and Timothy was given his whip back to replace the feather. It is also an attraction that is in every Disney castle park around the world, located in Fantasyland in all but Shanghai, where it's located in Fantasia Gardens. My incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is a craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern or 6 Pacific. Art Throwdown is a wonderful community of artists who love to share their craft, from creating sticker postcards and coloring techniques to intricate paper cutting and unique crafting. It's always a treat to watch a show and occasionally get some one-of-a-kind postcards from the group. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard has an illustrated map of Rome, with different landmarks throughout the city, including the Colosseum and the Trevi Fountain, as well as culinary favorites like spaghetti, pizza, and coffee. It's postmarked November 20th, 2024, with a Santa Clarita cancel and a 2 sailboat postcard forever postage stamp, Scott number 5747. It reads, 11:14. Hi, Clocky. Italy was fun. We visited everything on this postcard. It was amazing to see ancient ruins amongst a thriving city. I loved visiting the Colosseum. Little Fiats and scooters abound. April. Thank you so much for the postcard, April. I was excited to see this postcard, knowing that you were going on a European adventure this month. Looking at the list of sites, I'm sure you were plenty busy going around the city to see everything on this postcard. I had a similar experience in Shanghai, seeing all the different Fiats and scooters going around the city. I'm glad you made it back safely and hope all your mail from your trip arrives to its intended destination. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/sentfromdisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at sentfromdisneyland or my website, sentfromdisneyland.com. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent from Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney-related properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to the host and guests of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by Clocky McDowell, website designed by Misty McDowell, theme song was written and performed by Noah Sunday Lefkowitz. Take it away, Noah.